Hey everybody. So we are going to be starting our next unit, and for this unit we're going to be looking at socialization and really talking about what makes us human specifically. So looking at this definition here, socialization is the social process through which we develop our personalities and human potential and learn about our society and culture. So we've talked a lot about the theories of how we're socialized by the three famous theories regarding conflict theory, symbolic interactionalism, and functionalism theory, right? But we haven't really talked a great deal about who we are socialized by and what makes up humans both socially and psychologically. So this unit we're going to be talking about nature versus nurture specifically today. That's where we're going to focus. We'll also look a little bit into like how we pass on culture from one generation to the next, how we learn the norms and values of our culture so that we can interact with others, and then we'll talk about roles and responsibilities, gender roles and whatnot in individuals in society. So within the social and psychological development of humans and what makes us human, you have these three specific issues. And this is actually a review from my general psych class, so if you've taken that, this should be somewhat of a refresher. We're going to be talking about a lot of these same theories that we actually discuss in psychology. So nature versus nurture, you have this aspect of looking at the genetic programmed process, right? Nature, and how nature explains our behaviors, how nature explains our personalities through a process called maturation. Okay? And while this is true, you also have a side of nurture. And so nurture focuses more so on experiences and environment and how those are what influence and shape you. So John Locke had the common phrase tabula rasa, or blank state, in which he basically stated as you're born, it's entirely your experiences and your environment that shapes you into the person that you are. So he argued very much against the aspect of nature, but we see that both are important in our development. Now, next we have continuity versus discontinuity. This kind of argues about the process of development and the sequence of development. From a continuity stage, it's arguing more so that development is continuous and that it's constantly happening, right? Whereas discontinuity focuses on a explanation that development happens in set stages, very discrete set stages in terms of our age. Some popular theories in discontinuity regard Lawrence Kohlberg, Erik Erikson on psychosocial development, and Jean Piaget on cognitive development. So lastly, we have stability versus change, and this is just discussing really our early personality traits. So whether or not we're very irritable or kind of out of control, very aggressive, very loud. Are these traits going to be something that are stable over time, or are these going to be to change later on in our lives? So these are really the dilemmas between social and psychological development in humans. Now, when looking at it strictly from a nature stance, we're talking about genetics. Okay, what is hereditary? And so our DNA, the complex molecule sequence containing the genetic code made up of 46 chromosomes. So, okay, you've learned this in biology class. We've got 46 chromosomes, 23 from your mother and 23 from your father. And so these DNA sequences make up our height structure, our bone structure, our hair color, possible chances of getting disease passing on from our parents, our temperament, our intelligence, our athletic abilities. All these things are going to be related to our genetics. And so as humans, we share 99.9% of this same DNA sequence with each other. So genetically speaking, we're actually almost identical with one another. Now, when looking at the genetics and the DNA sequences to help explain this issue of nature versus nurture regarding behaviors and traits and disease and treatment, habits and lifestyles, twin studies are used to further understand this effect of genes and how genes have really an effect on almost everything about us. So identical twin studies, monozygotic studies, are really useful, right, in the sense that they have the same genetic makeup, but also fraternal twin studies are very useful in understanding what is determined by nature versus what is determined by nurture. So the Jim twins were identical twins, and they're one of the most fascinating studies out there. But in 2009, not only the Jim twins, but they found that there were also 74 other identical twin studies that had tremendous amount of similarities, and not only in terms of their tastes and their physical attributes, right, what they look like, but also regarding their personalities and their fears and their interests and their abilities, their intelligence and their athletic abilities. And so a lot of these things we can see through twin studies, the correlations in these two different individuals, and how there's a lot of overlap. So it helps us explain what is actually nature versus what is actually nurture. So when looking at separated twins like the Jim twins, we can see here that they definitely have a lot of similarities. Okay, they're very alike in a lot of ways. Same dog name, they both had the same son name, both enjoyed woodworking, stock car racing, white bench in their yard, both drove a blue Chevy. More on the genetic side, they both had high blood pressure, they both had the same voice intonations, right? They're pictured here in the top left. But is this research actually scientific is the big question. And a lot of people would argue yes. I mean, it's obviously yes. There's definitely a lot of empirical research out there showing these similarities between identical and fraternal twins. There's also critics saying, hey, guys like these Jim twins, for instance, and a lot of these other studies that have been done regarding identical twins, a lot of them grew up in the same socioeconomic background, right? A lot of them grew up having a similar culture, and therefore these similar behaviors and similar interests and personality traits could really happen between anyone that grew up in those same environments. They don't necessarily have to be twins, okay? Whereas Jack and Oscar, right, the Jack and Oscar twins of 1924 was a little bit different story, but still you saw similarities where Oscar grew up in a Jewish family in Trinidad during World War II, and Jack grew up in a Catholic family in Czechoslovakia during World War II. And so Czechoslovakia was annexed under Hitler. So he had a very different religious view. He had a very different political view. And his work ethic was different than his brother Oscar, where Jack was a workaholic. Oscar was much more had a much more leisurely lifestyle, work-life balance, and he had conservative political views, and of course he was Jewish, not Catholic. However, similarities that were seen were their tastes, their interest in sweet and spicy foods. Their intelligence was identical. Their athleticism was identical. They were both very athletic. And so, is hereditary or environment stronger? Well, they are both important in terms of the political makeup of who we are and our identity. So this closing question for today is nature versus nurture, right? This issue. Which one's more influential? And again, there's really no answer that's settled this. Hereditary is anything attributed to genetics. Environment is anything else, right? That determines our behavior. And so we don't know entirely everything that is genetic, how that impacts behavior, and everything that's environmental, how that affects our genetics. But we do know for certain that physical and mental abilities are most linked to hereditary, right? So regarding intelligence, regarding athleticism, regarding temperament, those types of things are going to be more related to hereditary influences. And then things such as attitudes, values, they're going to be more so linked with the environment. So, of course, things like intelligence could definitely be impacted by some of these other environmental issues, right? Or agents of socialization like family. If your family discourages any sort of athletic activity, however, and although you're very athletic naturally, it's going to hinder your ability to perform in an athletic setting, in an athletic environment. You're not going to have those skills developed, although you actually had the genes to be very good at that, right? They both affect each other, and sometimes one more than the other. Now, for your last slide today, I want you to answer these questions, these 5 questions. And we've kind of talked about a lot of this, but I want you to watch these 2 videos. They're fairly short, and after you're finished watching them, go ahead and write down and complete the questions here. And you will do that in the comment section, all right, on Edpuzzle. So that's really it for today, guys. Thanks for coming to class, and that's it for today. Take care.